Hello everybody, today we're going to talk about the Inquisition. Now if you don't know what that is, it was an organization set up in 1184 by Pope Lucius III when he issued a decree that all bishops were required to set up courts in order to prosecute and eliminate heretical threats to the Church. The purpose of the Inquisition was originally to suppress and convert heretical Christian sects that had begun to emerge in southern Italy and France. These early attempts to form an Inquisition failed, though, due to the looseness of the Pope's control over these tribunals and his attempts to enforce the presence of the papacy on them. The medieval Inquisition is distinct because it was the earliest Inquisition. It was the first successful attempt at forming one in 1231 by Pope Gregory IX. He was the Pope who established a more centralized and efficient inquisitorial system that answered to his authority alone. Though torture was not officially part of this Inquisition's investigations, it was made official by Pope Innocent IV, who gave inquisitors the right to use torture in order to extract confessions from those accused in 1252. Typical heretical groups targeted during this time were the Cathars, Waldensians, and Albigensians. In the year 1248 or 49, the first inquisitorial handbook was written, which described the methods that inquisitors were to use when conducting their investigations and prosecution of heretics. The medieval Inquisition was mainly based with its operations in Germany, Italy, and France. The procedures used by the medieval Inquisition were often funded by secular leaders, who more or less seized the property of heretics, and were funded by mendicant orders like the Franciscans and the Dominicans, who we learned about earlier this year. Those accused of heresy were often given a period of time in which they could recant or admit their wrongdoings in order to lessen the severity of their sentence. Accused persons could also attempt to appeal to the Pope, but this was rather difficult and costly to do, given that purpose of the medieval Inquisition was to get rid of heresy in the Catholic territories. Execution was not a priority for the Inquisition in their trials of heretics. Those accused often stood no chance of being found innocent because trials were often required the accused to be well educated on theological issues. Those accused of heresy often didn't stand a chance of being found innocent, because the trials often required them to be well educated on theological issues. Friars were often on the offensive against these people, and tried to get them to confess or slip up during the trial. But this was somewhat effective, and most were assumed guilty if they did not Those accused of heresy did not stand much of a chance of being found innocent, because the trials were often heavily weighed against them, using well-educated friars to try and get them to slip up during their defense, and if a person did not show up to their trial, they were assumed guilty. If a person was found guilty of heresy, they would often more or less be forced to wear special crosses or go on a pilgrimage as the standard form of punishment. Rarely were they executed, and as we have stated, torture played a huge role in these trials because the Inquisition needed it to extract confessions. An old example of this was in 1307 when the Church ordered the confessions of members of the organization known as the Knights Templar. Before trials, many accused heretics were held in one of two prisons, which one depended on the severity of your crime. Execution of heretics also at this time was common because heresy was seen as a capital offense in many nations. However, executions carried out by the Inquisitions were rare, and often when mass executions took place, they showed small numbers, such as the burning of 200 Cathars at the stake in 1278 at Verona. The original purpose of the Spanish Inquisition, which is the secondary Inquisition we're talking about, was to test and investigate the legitimacy of the faith of newly converted Catholics in Spain. This was mostly directed at Jews and Muslims, along with several other minorities like Gypsies, who were the targets of this Inquisition because they more or less posed a legitimate question. These defendants were often also delinquents who had more or less posed a threat to the community with their sins. The Spanish Inquisition was established in 1478 by Ferdinand of Aragon and Queen Isabella of Castile, who were granted permission by Pope Sixtus IV to create and manage an inquisitorial system in Spain. This Inquisition sought to unify Spain under the Catholic faith. This noble goal, however, was undermined through the maintenance of an extremely intolerant and superstitious system that would not leave Spain and its territories until the 19th century. The Inquisition, as we have stated, was founded by the rulers of Spain in the 15th century to create a Catholic Spain. The most brutal period of the Spanish Inquisition was defined by its leader at the time, Thomas de Torquemada. Thomas de Torquemada served as the confessor to the Queen before he became part of the Inquisition in 1482. In 1483, Torquemada became Grand Inquisitor of the Spanish Inquisition and served in his position for 15 years until his death in 1498. During the time of his leadership, the Spanish Inquisition condemned over 2,000 heretics to death. Torquemada's influence over the monarchs of Spain allowed for him to convince them to expel all Jews who refused to convert to Catholicism in 1492, causing the expulsion of 160,000 to 200,000 Jews. In 1834, the Spanish government and the Church dissolved the Inquisition, but not after centuries of injustice and unfair trials were carried out. The procedures and methods used by the Spanish Inquisition are well known because they tended to use torture to extract false confessions and gain statements from those accused. Trials for witchcraft were generally frowned upon by this Inquisition because, more or less, the Church did not believe in it. After trials were completed, the Inquisition would hold a ceremony called the auto de fe, which means act of faith, in which the sentences of the accused were read to the public. That's it. I hope you enjoyed my presentation and learned a lot about the Inquisition. Thank you.